Hey, well, let me kick this off. Good morning, everyone. Todd Lang, Director of Transportation Planning at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. Before I turn the meeting over to the chair, Mr. Cahoon, I just wanted to say happy holidays to everyone. I know this is normally our cookie meeting in person. We will have to reschedule the cookie meeting in person. But we did want to introduce you to our new demographer at BMC and go through some updates since it's been a little while. So with that, I will turn it back to the chair to gavel in the meeting and start our process, Mr. Kuhn.
Okay, thank you, Todd. We'll go ahead and open the meeting of the December meeting of the Cooperative Forecasting Group. First item on the agenda is the approval of the June 26 minutes. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review them. And are there any changes to the minutes? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll prove it.
All right, we have a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? All right. No discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes and the minutes are approved. Okay, at this point, I'll turn it over to Todd Lang for introduction.
Great. Let me get off mute. Again, Todd Lang here at BMC. Appreciate everyone coming and joining just a quick virtual meeting here in December. I know it's been a couple of months, but as everyone probably saw by email, our former demographer, Sean Kimberly, has moved over to the Maryland Department of Planning. And after a search, we found a great candidate who has joined BMC. His name is Matt Hancock. He is online and on camera right now. So I'm going to give Matt just a couple minutes just to quickly go through and say hi to everyone. Make sure we will have time for separate meetings with everyone so that you can get to know Matt a little bit. But Matt, you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the introduction and hello, everybody. Just to second what Todd was saying, happy holidays. Thanks everybody for being here. It is my third week in this role now, so still relatively getting everything going, but definitely excited to be here. My background is in sociology and rural sociology, and I've been working with kind of population statistics and kind of delivering that information and doing analysis on it for the last few years. So I'm excited to carry on that work. Hopefully we'll be moving to Maryland relatively soon, currently in Mississippi, where my most recent role was. So we will see, but hopefully I will be able to attend these meetings in person over the next few months, and excited to get to meet everybody in person.
Great. With that, Mr. Chair, we do have a couple of quick presentations if you want to kind of move us through the agenda.
Sure. Matt, welcome aboard, and we all look forward to working with you. So glad you're here. Next on the agenda, the Long Range Transportation Plan Schedule and Scenario Planning tool. Zach Kaufman is here to present on that.
Hello, Crystal, can you enable sharing for me?
Yes.
Right. Awesome.
So you should be able to share your screen now, Zach.
All good?
Yep.
Yep, it's up. Okay. Thanks, Steve. So I have a few slides here on the 2027 LRTP and kind of the cooperative forecasting group's role in that. As part of that, I'll kind of go through the development process for the LRTP because while it is a 4-year process, and it seems like we just adopted one in 2023, I guess, we are already starting to gear up for the next one. So, and I also wanted to highlight a scenario planning project that we have initiated in preparation for the LRTP. Okay. So quick reminder, the LRTP is the Long Range Transportation Plan for the Baltimore region. It's one of our core required products. It addresses at least a 20-year planning horizon beyond the time frame covered by our Transportation Improvement Program. So if you're not familiar with the TIP, that's a 4-year document that covers the next 4 fiscal years projects anticipated to use federal funds and obligate funds over the next 4 years. And then the long range plan covers the next 20 plus years beyond that. We update it every 4 years because we don't adhere to air quality standards in the Baltimore region for ground level ozone. So that's a federal requirement. It is fiscally constrained by anticipated revenues. And the core of the plan is a list of planned major federally funded capital projects, their costs and revenues anticipated to be available. But it's also, a policy document that provides a transportation vision for the region and details various trends that we anticipate to affect the region over the next, couple of decades. So this is what a broad look at the development timeline is. I'll go into each of these tasks briefly. Right now, we're working on a scenario planning and needs assessment project through mid next year. And then that's really when the core of the plan work gets started. And you can see that the CFG process for forecast, it's a fairly early task because we use those forecasts through 2055 for this upcoming LRTP of households, jobs, employment, for a lot of the modeling and a lot of the project-oriented work. So that's a fairly early step, and that'll be going on in 25 into 26. We'll have public involvement activities throughout. We kind of start off with looking at our goals and strategies for the region. We have to develop a financial forecast to get an idea of how much money is available. And then the meat of the work really starts in 2026, where we have submittal and scoring of projects. We develop a draft preferred alternative. We analyze that selection of projects that are anticipated to be included. We have a public comment period and then adoption in mid 2027. So a long process, but a lot of steps along the way. So goals and strategies, as I said, form the transportation vision for the region. We have 9 goals that are based on federal and state requirements, trends, technologies, as well as public comment. And they're kind of, basic things that you might expect, like improving accessibility, increasing mobility, improving system safety, maintaining the existing system, environmental conservation. So those core goals don't change a lot because they're kind of based on federal planning factors, but there are a number of strategies that we adopt to help us to achieve those goals, and those are revised substantially with each plan. I also mentioned a financial forecast. That's a loose time frame of late next year into early 2026, though that could be potentially delayed. Generally, MDOT provides the forecast of anticipated federal and state revenues in kind of 3 big buckets of preserving the system, operating the system, and expanding the system. And we pay for system preservation and operations first. So whatever is left over is what is available for expansion. So total revenues minus what we anticipate our needs are for preservation and operations gives us that expansion budget. And really most of the projects that we're evaluating for the long range plan are competing for those expansion dollars. We also developed a tool as part of the last long range plan to estimate local revenues available for transportation. So we get a better picture of the full suite of revenue available for the transportation system over the period covered by the LRTP. This gives you a broad look at what the financial forecast has looked like over the last 4 plans. You can see that operating covers accounts for the vast majority of expenses. It's been fairly consistent in terms of percentage at about 53-ish%. But one thing to look at is that system preservation needs, I don't know that this is surprising to folks, but they have been increasing substantially and have increased as a percentage from about 21-ish% to about 30%. And so at the same time, the amount available for expansion has decreased from like 26, 27% down to about 17%. So system preservation needs expanding, continuing to expand. And as a result, we have less money to build new projects. Project submittal is anticipated in like spring of 2026. That is really initiated by our local jurisdictions coordinating with MDOT-SHA to submit priority projects for all roadways within their jurisdiction, as well as transit projects. And then MDOT-MTA also submits their suite of prioritized transportation or transit projects. And then that sets us up for beginning to score and evaluate those projects, which is anticipated in spring into summer of 2026. We have an adopted scoring methodology that goes before our board. We updated it fairly substantially for the last LRTP, and we may make some minor updates, probably not a complete overhaul, but there are two key parts of that scoring methodology. The policy score is really in the hands of the submitting jurisdictions. They can elect high priority projects, medium and low priority projects. They get different sets of points. So obviously the higher priority projects, you want to give the most points. And then if there's already kind of skin in the game, if the project has been funded, has entered early stages of planning, there's some allocated funding, they get an additional point bump. So that's 40 points in total. And then there's a technical score where BMC staff score projects based on criteria that are drawn from the goals and strategies. So transit are eligible for a total of 55 points, highway up to 50 points, and we evaluate projects based on safety, accessibility, mobility, environmental impacts, security, which is largely evacuation mobility related, and economic prosperity. So we total up the points. As I noted, transit projects are eligible for 5 additional points. That is due to public comments over the past several LRTP cycles, encouraging the BRTB to focus on transit and reduce the focus on roadway widening. And we use those scores to create a preferred alternative projects based on costs, project scores, and committee input. So our first cut is really ordering them from highest to lowest and kind of whittling down the amount available until we get to a line where we have no funding available. And then at that point, it's presented to committees and they evaluate what projects did make it, didn't make it, and there might be some changes. All right, so that kind of gives you an idea of a lot of the big steps in the LRTP. Where the CFG comes in is with, of course, the forecasts of households, population, and jobs through the out year of 2055. And it's a fairly early step in the process because 1, it takes a while to develop, and 2, we need them. They're a key element in as early as project scoring. So we use the forecasts in our travel demand model for the horizon years for the plan, which I think are anticipated to be 2035, 2045, and 2055, though I believe the forecasts are generally in 5-year increments. Key uses include project scoring. Our accessibility and mobility criteria rely on the forecasts. Through the horizon year of 2055, we calculate access to jobs, congestion measures, as well as transit connectivity based on those forecasts to score projects. After we've scored projects and have selected a preferred alternative, we also utilize the forecast as key inputs to our travel demand model to analyze the potential effects of the preferred alternative. So what are the effects of building the LRTP in 2055 versus only building what is existing and committed now? So we have a baseline scenario compared to the LRTP full build out scenario. And there's a few elements of that. We do travel demand modeling, looking at trip purposes, VMT, congestion. We do air quality conformity modeling because we don't attain federal air quality standards. So we need to ensure that the projects included in the LRTP don't take us out of alignment with the transportation budget set by MDE for ground level ozone in particular. So we need to make sure we're adhering to air quality standards. We also do environmental justice analysis, which really is about seeking to ensure that the benefits and burdens of investments are equitably distributed, particularly for low income and minority populations. And for that, we use the travel demand model to compare travel patterns and potential impacts for EJ and non-EJ populations for a variety of measures, job accessibility, shopping accessibility, travel times, and the share of the population close to key destinations. And we do that for transit and roadway. Okay, kind of an abrupt transition. So that's how the CFG forecasts feed into the travel demand model, and based on the schedule, you all would be getting started with that in spring of 2025. That enables enough time for the CFG to develop them through the end of 2025. Here, I'll just go back to this schedule slide, which was way in the beginning, of course. Okay, through fall of 25, and then there's a process where we review them, ask questions, and develop model inputs, and ultimately that leads up to adoption of those presentation to the BRTB and adoption of those forecasts in mid-2026. And so having them done in time to score the projects is really the key there. Right. And I did want to provide a brief overview of our scenario planning project, which is feeding into the LRTP. This is a project that's intended to identify strategies and policies that work well under multiple identified scenarios associated with transportation investments, policy decisions, socioeconomic and demographic shifts that might be unexpected, housing, technology, and environmental impacts, and to analyze those potential impacts on equity emphasis areas as well. So I include this slide as a summary of our analytical framework for the project. I won't go real into depth here, but we're using a tool called Vision Eval, which is an open source modeling tool that enables quick analysis of a broad array of combinations of policy and demographic technological shifts. So this is a sample analytical framework. It's not necessarily what we are doing. We're kind of narrowing in the scenarios, but you start with a set of core categories like land use and community design, transportation investments, demand management, pricing policies. This particular example includes equity and income and commercial vehicles. And then you have Vision Eval requires a suite of input files. What does your population look like? What does your transportation network look like? All of those things are input files. You use that to build a reference scenario. And then you change that reference scenario based on different scenarios you'd like to model. So for land use and community design, you can see there's a level of change where they're considering community design characteristics and higher density housing. For bike and transit, they're considering scenarios where these are pretty big changes, but double bike trips, double transit trips, or triple transit trips. So what Vision Eval then enables you to do is analyze every iteration across all of those levels and categories. So there are 2 levels for land use and community design, 3 for bike and transit, 3 for demand management. You multiply that out, that's 432 different iterations, and it generates a distribution of impacts. And you can look at the relative impacts of each of those categories and scenarios on performance measures of interest like VMT, like congestion, like fuel use, greenhouse gas emissions. And so once you have these hundreds of scenarios, you can sort through those, identify promising scenarios, and then model some of the more promising ones in more detail with a traditional TDM that has a fully built out network and enables a little bit more detailed analysis. You could never do this many model runs with the TDM because it would take way too long, but Vision Eval is built for this kind of quick analysis of policy options and uncertainties. So what we're doing right now, the consultant is working on identifying best practices for from other MPOs that have used Vision Eval, and making recommendations on how to make this process as effective as possible. They've looked at a number of peer agencies. We also conducted a scenario planning survey called What If? That was open for about a month, closed just this past weekend, and was intended to gather input on priority scenario categories, variables within those categories, as well as how we measure outcomes for the project. So what we're moving towards here is fully defining the scenarios that we're going to build out in Vision Eval. This is just some advertisements that we did for the project. We did get quite a bit of participation. Over 500 participants took the survey. What we're working towards is a full build out of the Vision Eval model, which takes quite a bit of work, building those scenarios and then doing the model runs in January. We'll have a more fully fleshed out set of scenarios in early January, which will be presented to the technical committee, followed by Vision Eval and Insight model runs in January, maybe into February, and then taking those, analyzing them, and exploring the potential impacts across those scenarios in a set of scenario workshops, including BRTB and subcommittee members, local, state, housing and planning staff, and nonprofit and business organizations. So it's a total of 3 separate in-person scenario workshops for the project. Yeah, so that was a fair amount of information, but I thought it would be useful to keep the committee apprised of LRTP activities and this project.
And this is Todd. Just to add on to that, a couple things we wanted to. I know that the group had a conversation about timing for the next set of forecasts. Obviously, we had pushed it off, so now we're going to start in earnest here as we start moving into 2025. Good part is that, during the last process, I know that a lot of the jurisdictions also submitted their methodology. So what we'll be doing is kind of going back, getting all the documentation from previous forecasts, pulling them together, and then doing individual outreach just to kind of make sure that you have that information and go through conversations about, different types of data sources and things that will be able to help you with in terms of your forecasting process. We can also say that these forecasts not only feed into the long-range transportation plan, but they also become, as Zach said, the basis for our travel demand model. And that travel demand model is used beyond our forecasting process. It's used for major transportation projects, such as the Bay Crossing study or any other major transportation project that goes on within your jurisdiction. So, ultimately, we want to make sure that those are as up to date as possible so that when you start looking at these types of major projects, that we have the current information out there. Second, in terms of the scenario planning process, we think that the build out of this new tool, the Vision Eval, is going to be pretty interesting. It has a lot of flexibility. So once we kind of get it validated for the whole region and the expanded region, there may be other opportunities beyond just the work that we do in the scenario planning process to work with your planning process, on different types of questions you may have. We have a staff member, Rockman, who's online here, who knows, at least has some experience with Vision Eval, and therefore we might be able to kind of expand it beyond that. So, but with that, we just wanted to make sure you guys knew kind of the preliminary timing and wanted to just get any initial feedback anyone may have or questions that you may have at this point. Thanks.
So open up for questions.
Maybe everyone's in shock at this point.
But, Zach, I think it's a really good overview of the long range transportation plan and the process we're getting ready to embark on. So I think that's really good information. And then the scenario planning tool. You said we were going to run a few scenarios or models and provide that information in January. Are there already specific scenarios that have been selected to run, and what would we kind of expect, or what scenarios have been selected?
Well, so we're still in the process of fully defining those. We are getting closer. We're working with a consultant. So we're, like I said, with Vision Eval, you select a number of core categories. And so these are kind of the core categories that we anticipate looking at. And we've divided them into things that are more policy related, like transportation investments, transportation fees and incentives, and housing and land use, and those that are more exogenous to what we control, like the pace of technological change, economic forces, demographic shifts. So we're defining a baseline and then scenario levels for each of these categories. So for transportation investments, we're looking at potentially a scenario where you invest more in bike ped and transit modes at different levels and in different spatial targeting scenarios to see what the impacts of that might be. We have one that's like a more TISMO TDM related to see what management and operations and demand management strategies might do to change, VMT, all those other kinds of things, mode share. Looking at and then a separate scenario that looks at increasing roadway lane mileage. So kind of like a broad suite of transportation investments that you could consider over the future and seeing what those impacts might be well, I won't go into all of these, but we're starting to build out different levels of fully defined scenarios across each of these categories. And the strength of Vision Eval then is to be able to model every iteration of those and kind of hone in on, okay, well, I like this scenario that, leads to, VMT reduction of 10%. Like I want to see which scenarios lead to a reduction of VMT of this amount. And you can kind of in real time explore, okay, well, this set of scenarios had that impact. Now, which is the primary driver of that change? Is it an investment? Is it a demographic shift that we didn't anticipate? Is it, some level of EV penetration or autonomous vehicle penetration? So you can so it's a very broad tool, and it enables analysis of a lot of different things simultaneously.
How did you guys come to choose Vision Eval as a tool?
So we first became aware of it at the AMPO conference a couple of years ago. There was a presentation from the Atlanta Regional Commission. They have been exploring, they were kind of an early adopter among MPOs, at least, of Vision Eval, starting in 2017. It was initially developed through a FHWA pooled fund for ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation. And it was initially developed as a tool to analyze specifically environmental factors and greenhouse gas emissions reduction. That has then since expanded to include lots of other policy drivers and changes. So that, for example, they've added, and we hope to use a work from home module as well as an autonomous vehicle module that will be used to analyze some technological change scenarios.
Okay.
So it's been more broadly utilized by a number of MPOs across the country, and state DOTs. VDOT has used it. And one of the consultants we're working with is actively building models, I think, for the New York area, for Boston. So it's being more widely adopted. And I think the thing that really attracted us to it is, we know the one thing we know is that we don't know. And it enables you to explore a wide variety of model runs and explore a lot of different uncertainty in a way that we just couldn't do with our travel demand model.
Okay, interesting. And I guess you mentioned the work at home module. That's kind of related to our projections, maybe also. I guess, Todd, that goes to that question of that survey that Sean had started up with that company, what the status of that, will we be able to?
Yeah, so that's actually next on the agenda. So
Oh, okay.
perfect.
Oh,
I'll
good.
give you a little update.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
But I guess any more questions about the, long range plan, the timing of the next round of forecasts or a scenario planning process? We'll certainly bring these to you also with updates, at the next couple of meetings.
Well, I had a question for Zach on the scenario planning tool.
Mhm.
And you brought it up on your presentation that we've gotten a tremendous amount of comments that oppose road widening and adding capacity to the highway system,
Yeah.
and that totally support transit and multimodal and others. And so this scenario tool would help us see what that would look like. If
Yes.
we went 25 years or 30 years with no investment in capacity enhancements and stuck totally to transit and bike and ped, it would give us insight on what that would look like after long-term investment.
Yes, that's something that we can, I mean, there's obviously a lot of assumptions built into these models, but yes,
Sure.
you can explore scenarios like that, and we plan to do that. Now, a thing that we could potentially learn is that, a lot of our land use is a little bit set, and, our region isn't growing super rapidly. So like, that kind of becomes like a how far can we get kind of analysis, like how much of a difference does that transit only scenario get us in terms of mode share, and because we have we have a very diverse region that has a lot of suburban and rural areas where transit doesn't work quite so well. So and you need that roadway network. So yeah, that's something that it enables you to explore. And you can explore like kind of realistic percentages, or you can say, I'm gonna like what Chittenden County, Vermont did. That's what the example I showed is they tripled transit trips. Now that's a very different region with far fewer buses running. So like we're not going to be looking at a scenario where we're tripling transit capacity because that financially and just logistically is not a practical scenario for the region, but we're looking at more reasonable increases in transit.
Yep. No, it's fine in the ballot.
Yeah.
So, and this scenario tool projects forward in time.
Yes.
Will project all the way to like 2055.
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to build all of those horizon years, but Rockman has based on his experience with travel demand modeling and his reading through, Vision of Alice documentation is built. We have a baseline year, and then we have 2030 build out and 2050. So that it requires you have to provide all the input files for all those, and it's like 150 some files. But it's fairly onerous, but we over a few months Rockman was able to get it pretty built out, and now we're kind of calibrating that baseline scenario, and once we have that, we can build out this scenario input files and do the model runs. But it does extend through 2050.
Anybody else have questions for Zach on his presentation? Okay, if not, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is forecast update plans in 2025.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, actually, we had kind of combined that into Zach's
Yep.
presentation.
Gotcha.
So unfortunately, we did that after we released the agenda. So again, I think everyone saw what we're hoping to do in terms of the forecasting timeline. Now, the next step is us kind of reaching out to everyone, making sure you have the most current information. There's been some data sources that we can start updating for everyone in preparation. Bless you, Regina.
Oh,
All right,
sorry.
well, next we'll get the update on the post-pandemic trends project that's ongoing.
Great. Crystal, if it's okay, I will start sharing my screen if that's all right. Let me get that up. Okay. So as Jeff was mentioning, there we began this project, what we call the post-pandemic trends project this past year, and we've gotten some updates from the consultants. In fact, we just this morning we got the first draft of what would be a presentation that we're hoping to get ready for February and the February CFG meeting. We do have a draft of one of the initial reports, and we're starting to phase in the second part of the project. So this project was broken up into two different phases. The first one was a survey, basically looking at employees and then employers. And I'll give you a little update and a little taste of what is going to be coming out in the period in probably the February meeting as we get to that point, where we'll not only be able to give you all the presentation by PowerPoint, but we'll be able to share the entire report. The biggest thing that we were dealing with over the past couple of months is there were so many questions and so many tables in the report trying to actually tease out what are the most important items to try to summarize what we found within the analysis. So we think we've gotten to that point, and I'll go through just a quick look at what we're calling the executive summary, but there is a lot of information that we're not able to basically summarize unless we were to get into, hour-long, different presentations on this type of project. Then the second phase is the work on looking at things like office space utilization, the kind of change in where people are living post-pandemic, and then kind of projections for how this might be able to be translated into the next set of forecasts. So I just wanted to quickly kind of give you, a look at what we're seeing from the initial phase. Again, this was the employee and employer survey. So there was 1,630 employees were surveyed and 77 employers in the period of February to April. This is one of the tables that is coming out of it, and what, again, some of the early takeaways from this report. So basically what we're saying, almost 2/3 of the employees are working entirely or primarily in person. That means 35% are working either in a hybrid fashion or entirely remote, which goes up to 54% when you factor in those are primarily in person, but occasionally remotely. So again, there's a lot of different information here. What we're finding is, pre-pandemic, we had a very small kind of work from home share, but that has changed dramatically in the post-COVID environment. Then we have other questions, basically, what would be everyone's ideal work? There are some people that would, like to be completely remote, or people who would like to come into the office some days a week. We're finding that ideally people would want to work more remotely than they are allowed to at this point. And we're able to kind of break that down in terms of what their current situation is versus what they would consider to be their ideal situation. And not surprisingly, more people would like to be able to do at least a hybrid situation or all remote work from home. Then we get into the situation where what is the future of both hybrid work and then remote work? And we did find a definite disconnect between what employees anticipate happening and what employees are planning to what happened. Basically, what they're saying is They generally see companies maintaining their current work from home policies, but employees are less sure. They expect, and up to 21% believe that employers will require them to work more in the office more frequently. And we're seeing that obviously in the federal government side, but we're putting numbers to those different types of anticipations. Therefore, this is some of the data that we're going to be able to use to start doing future projections in terms of how this penetration may work. So that's just some quick updates in terms of where we are with the post-pandemic trend consultant task. Again, we have a phase 1 report that we think is pretty tight and that we're hoping to release to this group fairly soon. But we are anticipating presentation level material ready for the February series of meetings, both on the, again, phase 1 employee and employer survey, and then also on the phase 2 that includes, some of these other areas, including things like office space utilization and how this would feed into the cooperative forecasting projections. So again, sorry we've been a little bit dark on the project level. We have been, trying to catch up also with the project manager kind of transitioning over to MDP. But we hopefully are going to get some data here soon, and hopefully it'll be able to inform the process as we're moving to a new set of forecasts. With that, are there any questions from the group? Okay, I will stop sharing, and maybe we can, as we said, we want to try to keep this meeting pretty quick, but we'll turn it back to the chair and kind of move through the next set of questions.
No, appreciate the update and look forward to getting more information on it. Next, suggested topics for 2025 meetings. As Matt's coming on board, and as we're looking forward to the new year, just wanted to see if anybody had any specific topics or presentations they would like to see in 2025. Or open to suggestions. Yep.
I think it would be helpful to have, some presentations that would help us with doing the forecast. And in particular, what I find the most difficult to forecast is employment or jobs. It's easier to forecast, in my opinion, population. There's more resources, and it's often hard to get information on jobs because a lot of employers, they don't like to provide information, like as far as the number of employees, things like that. So anything that could help us with our forecast and different resources out there.
Sure. Looks like Greg had his hand up, Mr. Chair.
Yep, Greg.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Greg Goodwin with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, kind of your counterparts down here in the DC area. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Matthew to the forecasting world. Would love to have a conversation with you, Matthew, at some point. Kind of catch you up on kind of what we do down here, how our process kind of relates to your cooperative forecasting. I just added you to our email distribution list, so please look forward to participating in our meetings as well. And I also kind of volunteer that as a possible topic, I'd love to maybe make a presentation about what we are currently working on. We have actually taken on a new round of forecasts this year. We're starting the process now, hopefully to wrap it up by mid part of 2025. We only have 7 or 8 jurisdictions that are participating, but it's still a pretty big plate, and would love to give some additional information about what we do down here. So whatever I can do to help, here to support.
Yeah, and again, there's been some new data that's been coming in the door. We want to make sure that we kind of share that out, both on the population and employment side. There's updates on projects, just like we said with the scenario planning process. We are also in discussions about a new household travel survey with the state. Last one was done in 2018, 2019. That was a statewide effort with, about 7,000 different types of interviews, and we're hopefully going to be able to get that started here potentially in the next year or so. So a lot of different work that's going on, and a lot of questions also that with what might be happening in the different regions with the new administration and some of the efforts that are being discussed about bringing people back to the office and changes in federal workforce, things like that, that, hopefully we'll get a little bit clearer picture here in the next couple of months and what that might mean to all of us.
Yes, everybody will stay tuned to those. So, okay, well, some very good ideas. Anybody else have any potential topics? And please, as you think of something, please share it with Matthew, and look forward to having some very good meetings in the upcoming year.
I'm
Jeff?
sorry. Yeah, just one kind of, I guess, question. Is BMC going to be involved in terms of scenario forecasting related to the state, like the governor's housing package and the various state initiatives that happened last year, and I guess legislation, the preemptive legislation, regarding trying to create more housing in near transit, that kind of thing. And I think it's going to happen. Some more things are going to happen additionally this legislative session as well, from what I've been hearing. Just a general question: how is BMC involved in that, in the state's discussion of all this?
So that actually was part of the conversation in the scenario planning. You saw that there was a housing and land use component. We've been trying to translate some of the numbers that our proposals in the governor's work in terms of if there were to be housing beyond our forecasts to try to meet kind of the target that the governor is setting, and then potentially in terms of, like you said, also from geographic focus on some of those potential housing locations and things like that.
Okay.
So we think Vision Eval might actually be a really good tool for that. We hope to also try to run those separately, so we would understand with them as the primary variable with a change of what that might mean. So yeah, absolutely. It's a great topic and exactly something we were talking just about yesterday.
That's interesting. Yeah. So you would be open to maybe so as a local government, we're being asked those same questions about how is it going to impact housing projections in Howard County. So that could be a tool we could partner with you perhaps on using as a resource, maybe.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We're also monitoring. There's going to be several other pieces of legislation that will have an impact potentially to this group, and we'll make sure that we highlight those for the group.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, oh, go ahead.
We got Al.
Go ahead, Al.
Thank you. Al Sundara with MDP. So I have a couple of comments, questions, I guess. Zach, I like the presentation, and it would be nice if you could share it so I can keep track of the timeline. Not necessarily right away. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is MDP also does population projections for all the counties in the state, including Baltimore City, as required by state statute. We are in the process of updating our pop projections. Maybe in the next couple of months, I will be happy to share them. And always in the past, we have used the projections that come out of BMC and MWCOGs, CFGs, but I know the schedule is a little behind, and the recent POP estimates are a little different than what the projections we have. Realistically, 25 numbers what we have in the projections for BMC are either behind the population estimates for 24 or something like that. So we are correcting a little. We will share them with you. And again, I know you are in the process of updating the projections as well. So just to keep that in mind. And again, like once you update them, we will probably use your numbers in our projections. That's how we have done in the past. But I'd like to share my findings at least. And there was a discussion on the jobs. And today morning I was listening to the radio. Our comptroller, Brooke Lehrman, was saying about the impact the state would have on the reduction of federal employment. The new administration that's going to come in, proposed moving federal jobs. It's not just the federal employment, it's the federal contractors as well. That's a significant number of employees. So we have to see how it will play, and not just employment-wise, but the economy. But that's something we don't really look into. We're looking at the jobs numbers. I think what's something else I wanted to mention. Yeah, that's probably it. And nice to meet you, Matt. I look forward to working with you as well.
I just shared a link in the chat box. So make sure everyone kind of knows that every meeting we have a recording. We also have the minutes, and every presentation that happens at this meeting will be on that website. Takes about a day or two to ultimately load them all up, but eventually this is a great place for you to be able to go back and look at previous presentations, things like that. And we'll definitely be uploading these.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention one last thing real quick. So there is a proposed bill that DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, is going to be overseeing, where they are looking at conversion of residential units, dilapidated units around Baltimore City to habitable units. I think they have a significant budget for that. And I passed on this information to the Census Bureau, because they are the ones that do the population estimates. And residential conversions is something that they don't take into consideration for the population growth, but they said they will definitely look into this. And there's going to be a significant increase, not in terms of the conversions that will happen, and might see an increase in Baltimore City's population in the coming few years. I'm done, thank you.
Great, thanks, Alan. Yeah, once you get those projections, it'd be great to see them and compare where we are to where MDP says, great. Anybody else?
Oh, I just wanted to add with regard to the employment that previously with the forecasts, we used like a ratio. There was a methodology that we used to predict both salary and self-employment. And so I didn't know if we were going to be using the same methodology. I mean, because there were specific ratios, I think, that each county was using.
Yeah, we're going through that right now just to get prepared. And like we said, we're going to be reaching out to everyone individually, make sure that you have that information, and then we can have that conversation again as a CFG.
Real quick, adding to what Kathleen mentioned, we provided the non-employer statistics information for proprietor information, and there was a methodology Mark Goldstein, my predecessor, developed that has been used by the CFG counties to do that. I can share that methodology and the documentation, and if that's something you would like to continue, that's fine. And there's also other technique that MWCOG uses about how they attribute this proprietors based on the ACS percentages. Greg, I'm sorry to volunteer, he will probably share that information, and you can weigh in both the methodologies and see what fits better for you and take it from there.
Great.
Okay, very helpful. Anybody else? Any other comments? All right, if not, any other business, we've come to the end of the agenda. So appreciate everybody being here, and wish everybody a safe and happy holidays, and look forward to working with you all next year.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, thank you.
Jeff.
Bye. Yeah.
Happy holiday,
You too.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.